This man murdered his best friend and went back to the crime scene a few hours later to evade suspicion. Together with his family, he instantly reported the incident to the authorities. In this body cam footage, you will see him become teary and hysterical, trying to sell an alibi story to the police, posing as if he only just arrived and knew nothing about the murder.
I'm trying not to freak out. I'm sorry. I can't not see it, man. I'm not supposed to see that, man. I can't not believe that.
How you come about coming out here?
That right there to be here is the whole plan.
How long you guys been?
8, 9 years.
Oh, yeah.
My kids call them uncle. They supposed to go to the Bahamas with us in August.
What if the murderer self-reported the crime to hide in plain sight? Will the authorities be able to unveil the truth? Today on Crime Diaries, we head to Ohio to explore the case of Brad McGarry. May 7th, 2017, Bel Air, Ohio. Police responded to a report about a man who was found dead in the basement of his own home. The victim, 43-year-old Brad McGarry, was shot twice in the back of the head. Brad's best friend, 30-year-old David Kinney, together with his wife and young daughter, were the first people to arrive and witness the crime scene.
111, 911, where is your emergency?
Hi, let's stay there.
Where are you at?
Wagner?
Okay, what's going on?
I don't even know.
You don't know what's going on?
Is he breathing? Oh my God. My husband is dead.
Okay, is that your husband?
My husband's freaking out, yes. His best friend. My daughter. Elizabeth, get outside.
Ma'am.
She's on the floor. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God, he has his blood in the back of his head.
As they initially planned, David's family went to Brad's residence to drop off a weed eater machine. When they arrived, David asked his daughter to go to the back door and call for Brad to inform him that they'd arrived and dropped off the weed eater. A few minutes later, David's daughter began screaming, "Uncle Brad's dead." They followed her downstairs and confirmed Brad's death. Upon seeing Brad's lifeless body, they immediately reported it to the authorities. The police promptly questioned David's family and Brad's neighbors in the hopes to find any leads. They also borrowed David's phone to copy photos that he took at the crime scene. The information they gathered started their investigations, looking into all the angles that might have been the motive or cause of Brad's death. Suicide was the first angle police investigated. Naturally, suicide victims fall on top of the gun they used to commit the act. So when the detectives arrived at the scene, they started inspecting the body. Surprisingly, no gun was found. This confirmed that Brad's death was not self-inflicted. He was killed by another person. Police proceeded to examine the entirety of the ransacked house. In their perusal, they found money on the floor, some gadgets, a quite expensive TV, and other valuables that were not stolen. This solidified the police brief that the killer must have known the victim personally and staged the house to be in a disarray in an attempt to show that the killer was an unknown robber. Hate crime was another angle that was investigated. Brad, being an openly gay man, raised eyebrows around him since he lived in a religious town. Since Brad had relationships with other men, conservative citizens of the town did not take him well at first. Police looked into the town's records. After further investigation, this angle was scratched since the town has a fairly peaceful history. Brad's sister also confirmed that Brad had a hard time in his work as a coal miner, but he was loved there. During the first body cam footage, a few moments after David and his wife reported the crime, it can be noticed that David mentioned Brad's previous gay lover, Scott. David said that the two previously separated due to a toxic relationship. They often bickered and fought, which gave the police a lead for someone who might have the motive to kill Brad. After finding out that Scott's full name was Scotty Butler, police immediately went to his residence. Upon knocking on the door, the cops were welcomed by Scotty's mother. She said that her son was in jail for the last 3 months for violating his probation. This was a solid alibi, and Scotty was cleared. Police were convinced that the perpetrator was someone familiar to Brad, with a motive to kill him due to personal reasons. Ultimately, a message that was taken from Brad's cousin raised the police's suspicions and drove the investigation to a clearer path.
Sunday, we went to Grammy's. We were sitting around the table. It was just me and Brad and Heather, which is another cousin of mine. And he made a comment how this DJ guy, he was coming over. Brad's intent was it was romantic. He made a joke about taking a nap. And it wasn't taking a nap. He was insinuating that they were having sex.
Interrogators found out that Brad also had a sexual relationship with David, even though David was a married man. Since the authorities had a hold of David's phone, they started not just copying the photos from his phone, but also investigating his texts with Brad. Even though David attempted to delete the evidence in his phone, the police were still able to put pieces of the puzzle together and were able to track that David's phone was in Brad's house at the time he was murdered, a solid piece of evidence to arrest Brad.
I just drove by his house to see if he was home yet, because we were talking. He's like,
Did you get out of the car or anything?
well, there's nothing. I'm not telling you. I did not kill Brad. I did not.
Your best friend's dead. You're telling me that you went to this elaborate way to cover up everything by taking your own daughter to the scene where the body
No,
was?
sir. Why would I do that? We sat there and argued and fought and fought.
Okay.
He kept yelling at me, "You need to leave your wife. You're over long enough. You know you love me. You need to leave your wife. You want to be with me." And I told him no.
The interrogator, however, was smarter than David. He started by making David believe that they were allies. He phrased his questions as if he was just there to prove David's innocence. David felt confident that he was talking to an officer who was ignorant and gullible enough to let him get away. Little did he know he was being set up to confess. When the interrogator confronted David about his phone being there at the time of the murder, David got caught off guard. He panicked and started spewing fake stories. The officer knew that he would continue lying, but he calmly let him do it, just to make him bury himself even deeper with his contrasting lies.
I sent out 5 detectives today.
Yes, sir.
Blair PD and everybody, and they interviewed a bunch of people. And all these people said you and Brad had been seeing each other for years, sexually. Like you guys have been a secret couple. And that they said your wife knows about it. You love this guy.
Yes, sir. My family, my kids.
You love Brad.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to tell you something. A guy like you, and you stop me if I'm wrong, if you didn't love Brad, you would have never with him that way.
I've known the man 8 years.
Right now, they're GPS in your whole day.
I've known the man 8 years.
How long you were at that house. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is your chance to get in front of this.
Yes,
You're
sir.
not the type of guy that would do something like that.
No, sir. I would not kill him.
There's got to be something to it.
I-
There's got to be a reason.
I shot him.
Even though his versions of the scenario were fake, it still led him to admitting that he was the one who shot Brad. David realized that he got cornered into confessing, so he stopped talking and asked for a lawyer. After over a month of thorough investigations and interviews, David's confession was used against him. Several pieces of evidence, including CCTV footage of him driving to Brad's place at the time frame of the murder and crying on his return, were also uncovered. David was arrested and charged with first-degree murder on May 9, 2017. In February 2018, David was sentenced to life imprisonment without a possibility of parole. On his final trial day, he read an apology letter, but never admitted nor explained the motives for his actions. David is currently serving his life sentence at Belmont Correctional Institution in St. Clairsville, Ohio. David attempted to self-report his crime to run away from it, but as always, the truth prevailed. Even though his case was solved and Brad's murderer will now suffer a life sentence, His loss will never be returned. Brad's loved ones and David's family will forever bear the pain of grief and disappointment. May their loved ones be able to eventually move on, and may Brad's soul rest in peace. What are your thoughts about the murder of Brad McGarry? Tell us in the comment section. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to get the latest updates. This has been Crime Diaries, and until next time, don't be another statistic.